Welcome to Selling Across America, the world's first talk show totally dedicated to salespeople and the art of selling. Your host, Anthony Parinello, is a best-selling author, sales trainer, and mentor to over 2 million salespeople. His strategies and tactics are used by thousands of companies in more than 30 countries. No matter what you sell or who you sell it to, you won't want to miss a word. So turn it up. Now, here's your host, Tony Parinello.
Way back in time, during the 1960s, a person by the name of Dr. David Merrell, who was a behavioral scientist, and a group of other behavioral scientists decided to investigate the workplace and find out if there were different personality styles that were better suited for different jobs, tasks, and working with various teams. Dr. David Merrell and his associates decided to investigate salespeople. I guess what? And they did that. They tested over 9,000 salespeople and gave them a very simple test to decide if there were different personality styles within the rank and file of salespeople. And then, of course, they extended that research into other workplace environments. Here's what they found. They took these salespeople and they asked them 2 basic questions to decide what type of personality style they were. So now I'm going to take you through the Dr. David Merrell research, and as you listen to this, you'll be able to decide and decipher what style you are and what style others around you in your work group or your prospects and customer base, their styles might be. So now let's take a look at this. So first of all, get a piece of paper. Now, of course, if you're driving your car, flying your private jet, or working any equipment that's painted yellow, like a D9 Caterpillar, you don't want to do this right now. But if you can, get a big piece of paper. And what you're going to do is you're going to draw a line across this piece of paper, right through the center line of the paper, horizontally. And then you're going to draw another line down the center of the paper, vertically. So when you look at this piece of paper, you'll have 4 squares, basically. Upper left, lower right, and upper right. Now, on the vertical line at the very top of it, write the 2 words hold inside, H-O-L-D, inside, at the very top of the vertical line. At the very bottom of the page, on the vertical line, write the 2 words openly show. Got it? So at the top of the vertical line, hold inside. At the bottom of the vertical line, openly show. Now, the horizontal line at the very left end of it, left side of the paper, write the word ask, A-S-K, and they go all the way over that horizontal line to the extreme right-hand side of the piece of paper, and write the word tell, T-E-L-L. Now, there are 2 questions that I'm going to ask you. And when you answer it, you're going to write, draw a little X on either the vertical line or the horizontal line. Now, when I ask you these questions, don't put any conditions on it. Just answer it, immediately. Don't think, well, it depends upon the situation. It depends if I'm at home or if I'm at work or if I'm playing a sport. Don't put any conditions. Just I want the first answer that comes into your mind. And so now, when you are in a conversation, are you more of an asker, asking questions, or are you more of a teller of telling stuff? Now, very simply, if you are more of an asker, you draw a little X on that ask line over to the left-hand side. If you're extreme asker, you ask lots of questions, and your X will be all the way over on the horizontal line to the left-hand side of the page. If you tend to be more of a teller, telling rather than asking, then you draw an X on that horizontal line all the way over or some degree across to the tell side. The more of a teller you are, the further your X will be on the horizontal line all the way over to the right. The more of an asker you are, your X will be way over to the left. Just draw a little X. Here again, no conditions. Oh, it depends if I'm speaking to my spouse or significant other. It depends if I don't do any of that. Now, Second question, do you openly show your emotions, or do you hold inside your emotions when you're communicating with others? Now, if you are emoting your emotions openly to a very high degree, then your X would be all the way down on the vertical line on the bottom of the piece of paper. If you hold inside your emotions, and it's very hard to tell if you're emotional about anything, then your X would be all the way up on that vertical line to the hold inside. Now, you should have, when you look at this piece of paper, after answering those two questions, 2 X's. And if you don't, then you're going to have to wait to listen to the archive of this and rewind it and do it again. You should only have 2 X's. That's it. Now, here's what we're going to do. We're going to label you first, and then we could do this for other people you know, either on your sales team or your workplace or your home environment or wherever else you seem to hang out. But we're going to write 4 more words on this piece of paper. In the upper right-hand side of the piece of paper, in that little square up there, write the word driver. Driver, D-R-I-V-E-R, in that upper right-hand quadrant. Write the word driver. Right below it, in the lower right-hand quadrant, write the word expressive. Write the word expressive. On the other side of the vertical line, at the upper left-hand side of your piece of paper, in that little quadrant, write the word analytical. Analytical goes up in the upper left-hand quadrant, and at the last quadrant you have left should be on the lower left-hand side quadrant. Write the word amiable. Amiable. So now as you look at this piece of paper, you should have 4 boxes, 4 quadrants identified. Upper right, driver. Lower right, expressive. Upper left, analytical. Lower left, amiable. And this is all, you give this credit not to me, but to Dr. David Merrell and his team of behavioral scientists. And since way back when, in the 1960s, that Dr. David Merrell established these names in this easy test, lots of people have taken it and performed different stuff with it, made it difficult, made it more complete, whatever. But in its simplest form, you have in front of you. Now, connect the dots, connect the X's. In other words, if you have an X over on the tell side and you have an X up on the hold inside, draw those 2 lines together so you come up with the fact that you are a driver personality. If you tell in a conversation but you openly show emotions, then if you draw those 2 lines together, you are what's called an expressive. On the other side, if you hold inside but you're an asker, connect those 2 up and you're analytical. If you openly show your emotions and ask, you're an amiable. Now, what does that mean? Here's what it means. We all have a primary personality style and a secondary personality style. What we just accomplished here was your primary personality style. So let's stay with that a while and let's look at these different silos, these different quadrants. A driver personality. Now you can pretty well guess at this point that a driver personality is someone who takes charge, gets things done, and doesn't really care if there's an explosion after they get it done. You probably have met people like this where they're a go get 'em, let's conquer that hill, let's take on the competition, let's move it forward, let's get it done. At the expense of whatever, it doesn't matter, we're getting it done. These are the driver personalities. Now, they usually find themselves in positions like a president, CEO, or owner of a company. Many salespeople are drivers, very much sports figures, competitors are very much drivers. Certainly coaches of sports teams are probably drivers. So the driver personality is to take no prisoners, win the war, get it done. You go below the driver, and look at an expressive, let's say in your case you came up to be an expressive style. Well, an expressive style is someone who is find themselves in marketing and sales, find themselves the center of attraction perhaps at a party, or when an expressive walks into the room, they've got the latest jokes, the latest style, the latest whatever. They're very outwardly going. They're very sociable. They're braggadocious, perhaps. And here again, many of us salespeople tend to be expressives. Yes. Now, let's just say your quadrant, your style, happens to be an amiable. In other words, you ask, and you openly show your emotions. So you're down on that lower left-hand side, the amiable quadrant. Amiables are usually like school teachers. They work at HR. They might be counselors or someone like that. They're very approachable. They're very warm. They're very compassionate. They're very understanding. They're very interested in helping others. That would be an amiable personality style. Now we have one quadrant left on the left side, on the upper left-hand side. It's an analytical. In other words, they hold inside and they ask. They're analyticals. Now, analyticals, we probably run into many, many times in our sales activity, in our sales work. They're the scientists, the engineers, the people who are investigating stuff. They work better with spreadsheets and schematics rather than individuals and others. And so if you are asked and you hold inside your emotions, you're an analytical. Now, putting labels on people and things is dangerous, but it's also very helpful. So now if you look at this, think back in the last week or so when you were making a sales call. The person you were with, were they more of a driver, an expressive, an analytical, or an amiable? And sometimes you could tell just by the decor of their cubicle or their office. A driver personality will probably have trophies and plaques and prizes hanging on the walls, maybe even a mannequin, not a mannequin, but a fish that they caught mounted on the wall, or the head of a who knows what hanging on their wall. Expressives, might have a very hip kind of cubicle with the latest magazines and stuff laying around. They might have invitations to the next company party that they're working on. You can tell that expressive, they're very, like I said, they're hip, they're in tune with the latest and greatest stuff that's going on. Amiable, you might find their office decorated with a quilt or some beautiful plants or pictures of their family. An analytical would probably be a minimalist. Their cubicle would probably be most likely very organized with a computer screen and a keyboard and a sharp pencil and maybe even a pocket protector. Now, what does all this mean? Well, here's what this means. It's not a good idea to try to mimic or parrot someone else's style when you're with them. All we're talking about here is recognizing the style and honoring the style. And here's some key attributes of all this. Like styles do not necessarily get along or work well together. For example, if you put two drivers together, oh man, there's going to be explosions all over the place, and one of them's going to win and the other's going to lose. Put two expressives together, they might be socializing more than doing anything else. Two amiables together, and they'll be more concerned about the world and the environment around them, and maybe they'll solve some interesting problems along the way, but you might find them both in tears when they're working together. Two analyticals together, and they're both trying to solve the splitting of the atom and the next scientific discovery, and it'll probably take them forever to do it. So like styles don't necessarily work well together. And styles that are situated on this chart you're looking at, or that you've created, directly across or perpendicular from each other generally have a more difficult time working together. For example, A driver personality style would have a difficult time working with amiables. You know? All right, let's get over the touchy-feely stuff and let's just get the job done. And meanwhile, the amiable is getting their feelings hurt because the driver is just pushing everything forward regardless of whose feelings they're hurting. In the same way, an expressive and an analytical together, my God, the expressive would be driving an analytical crazy because they're cutting corners. Don't worry about dotting the I's and crossing the T's. Let's just move ahead. And the analytical would want to be slowing everything down, making sure everything was perfect. However, styles that are up and down from each other are more likely to interact harmoniously. Yes, a driver and an expressive would work well together. An analytic and an amiable would work well together. So here's the key of all this. Here's the key. When you're with a prospect, what I want you to do is just recognize the style and honor their style. And understand that when you're with an analytical and you're trying to sell something to them, that they're going to be pretty slow and very methodical and want to make sure everything works the best it can, and it's all got to be 99.999% accurate, which means whenever you give them something or respond to any question they have, you have to be spot on. When you're with a driver, if you recognize that you're with a driver, and I sure hope you would, you've got to be brief, to the point, and on point, and get everything done ahead of time and call it a day. If you're with an expressive, you have to understand that they're going to want to be gregarious and talk about stuff and just prolong the engagement as much as possible, speaking about themselves and how great and wonderful they are. And if you're with an amiable, you got to slow things down and really respect their feelings. Now, in the next week or so, pay attention to the type of style that someone has and honor the style and respect it, but don't try to parrot it. And I might add, because I said before about the secondary style, when you do this chart for yourself, you can put some conditions on it, saying, well, most of the time I do this, but, sometimes I do that. And so you can have a primary and a secondary style listed on the same chart. Knowing your style and recognizing the style and honoring the style of others is extremely important in sales and in just about every other relationship we want to build. So now, if you want to get on the fast track and get all those C-suite appointments you've worked hard for and deserve so you could sell more faster and crush your quota in the process, then all you need to do is go to our site, VitoSalesTraining.com. Click on the Take Action tab, scroll down till you see the Vito University logo, and check it out. And in the meantime, have yourself a masterful rest of the day. Bye-bye.